and whether it is up or down. We are now joined by JT O'Sullivan of the QB School. Be sure to subscribe to his YouTube. Great stuff. JT O'Sullivan breaks down all the QBs, the veterans, the new guys. JT O'Sullivan played for the UC Davis Aggies and then also played in the NFL for the San Francisco 49ers, drafted by the New Orleans Saints. JT, thank you for taking the time, man.
What's up, fellas? How we doing? Well, Sactown, love it.
There you go. There you go. Yes. Let's start here. We're giving away tickets a little bit later in the show to see your UC Davis Aggies taking on Utah Tech. What are your fondest memories from your time at UC Davis?
Oh, man, that's loaded. We'd be here all day. I have so many memories. I mean, met my wife there, met some great lifelong friends there. Our third son is named Davis. I mean, it is a very special place. So we're planning on coming up in a couple weeks, see a couple buddies go into the Hall of Fame and just kind of celebrate that town. And I mean, really excited for Coach Plow to do his thing out there. I know he's in a kind of I think a great offensive mind, exciting football, and fired up.
Yeah, that's awesome, JT. Great to hear it. I want to ask you about Brock in the game that he had the other day on Sunday against the Vikings. There was a clip that kind of went a little bit viral after the game of him talking to defensive coordinator Brian Flores and saying, man, your schemes are absolutely wild. I just want to know from somebody who watches a ton of tape, what have you seen from Brian Flores' defense, specifically in that game, but also throughout his stint with the Vikings so far, that has just made him cause quarterbacks to have nightmares?
Yeah, it is a very unique scheme at the league level, and it's kind of interesting if you pull back and kind of see how Brian Flores has evolved defensively from his time in New England to being time as a head coach in Miami. I think there was a gap year for him where he was in Pittsburgh, and when he was in Pittsburgh, the story about how the defense evolved was, as he's coaching with the Steelers, they share a building with the Pit, and Narduzzi, the head coach there, is famous for this kind of cover zero. Presents almost like you're going to block a punt, and then you've got the capacity to play these zone coverages behind it. A lot of people call it hot quarters. And so I think Flores really fell in love with that stuff. And then when he went to Minnesota, he's kind of made it his own. It's a little bit different at the league level with just where the hashes are. It's not quite as wide of a game as college, but he definitely presents so many unique problems from a pressure standpoint. And then he doesn't play traditional zero behind it. He plays different coverages, and they run out to crazy non-traditional Tampas, things you just don't see anywhere else across the league. And so it's really special.
Talking to JT O'Sullivan, former NFL QB, UC Davis alum, and the QB School on YouTube. Let's stick with Brock, JT. A lot of people are saying with Debo out and Christian McCaffrey out and Brock is due for a big payday, okay, now is where Brock can prove that he's worth this money or prove that he's elite or that he's not just riding coattails. How do you feel about those type of statements? Or do you feel like Brock has anything left to prove?
You know, I don't know if we're ever going to get an answer to that question until we see him with like a different cast of characters. And that might not come until, later in his career. I mean, there's no denying the fact that that team is loaded really all over the place. But offensively, I honestly joke around that they're just, they got Avengers out there on the perimeter and all over the place. And so even when a few of them aren't there, they're still able to be really special. Now, it will be interesting to see what it looks like without McCaffrey and without Debo and how they kind of piece that thing together. But what Brock has done, I think, is elevate that unit. And that's kind of the measure for me with a quarterback. When he is in there, that unit, those players play better. It's his accuracy, his timing, his command, and then his capacity to extend that we just haven't seen that kind of cocktail of a player in that Shanahan system anytime soon. And so his ability to do all those things, I think, has gotten him, on that kind of runway to getting paid.
JT, especially today, it feels like things have ramped up in talking about the too high safety coverage. And, Mel Kiper is kind of going viral this morning for saying that the NFL should look into banning the too high. What are your thoughts on just kind of how that's affected the league so far? Do you think it's been a bit overblown? And just in general, I mean, with a lot of the quarterback passing numbers down so far in the league, what do you kind of attribute to it? What do you attribute it to the most?
I mean, I personally think it's a very funny statement to make. I don't, more than anything else. I mean, you take it for what it's worth. I've never spent 2 seconds thinking about outlining the depths of safeties. And I think if anything, it's a challenge to the offenses across the league. You either have to be able to run them out of it or execute them out of it. I think there are ways to go around it. Him like reminiscing about his childhood and throwing deep balls to guys, who just put.
He talked about the Baltimore Colts. I was like, this is crazy.
I mean, it was, it is what it is. I guess if that's your thing and you like that kind of rant, then that's where you need to be. But for me, it's more, hey, this is how the game has evolved. I think the defense has swung back to kind of be able to kind of handle what the offense has evolved to, and felt like they were on kind of the front foot for so many years. And now you feel like these schemes, these defenses are so multiple. It's not just, hey, they're in a 2-shell. They're in the 2-shell now and have the capacity to play any sort of coverage, and they're multiple up front, and they have multiple different zone packages, zone pressures, man pressures, different ways to play brackets that has just caught up to the offense. And so now it'll be the next iteration of it. I don't think you have to overreact with some what I would classify as borderline ridiculous rule change.
Talking to JT O'Sullivan, QB school and former NFL QB, also UC Davis alum. JT, we've talked a lot about Bryce Young, and a lot of people have had some things to say about Bryce Young. I want to get your thoughts on when you're watching film. Right now, the conversation has been bad team or bad quarterback. Just like a lot of things in life, maybe we live somewhere in the middle. As far as Bryce Young is concerned, when you're watching that film, how much of that is, yeah, this is just a bad situation, or, yeah, Bryce Young is clearly not who we thought he was, at least not yet?
So, I mean, this is one of those things where I'm really fortunate what I do. I will go back and watch the entire video, and I share the video, the entire game, with my community. And so they kind of get to feel my kind of, as we kind of pull it apart together. I think it's all of those things, unfortunately. I would also add that the ownership sure has made it seem like it's even more unstable and a worse position to be in from every level of football. So you add the ownership element to it, the lack of patience. Then you see the turnover in multiple coaches for Bryce, multiple position coaches, college, play callers, different scheme. I would say limited talent on the perimeter. It's just my opinion. There's not a lot of guys to throw to. There's not a lot of space. And then when you look at actual performance from Bryce, he probably regressed. Now, it's a ridiculous 2-game sample size. That's the part that's hard to understand. There's no way that a coaching staff would just, in my opinion, would just dump a number 1 overall without someone from somewhere else leaning on them, because you're developing this. You got hired to fix this. You got hired to make this better. Yeah, did it look good the first 2 weeks? Not really. It looked like a guy who's struggling with his confidence. But he got picked 1 overall for a reason. There is playmaker in there. There's the ability for him to be at his best, and to just give up on him, in 2 weeks. It doesn't make sense to me. That's why I just feel like there's got to be more to this story than the public knows.
Interesting. And yeah, I mean, we still have a lot of Raider fans out here, even though the Raiders have since moved to Vegas. But asking about Gardner Minshew, what do you kind of think the Raiders need from him to kind of succeed this season? I think, they obviously surprised a lot of people with their win last week against the Ravens. What do you kind of think the Raiders need from Gardner to have success this year?
I mean, that was a great win. Come from behind on the road in Baltimore versus a team that a lot of people think is going to be really good. I think when you look at that film, you saw a little bit of that Minshew magic, his ability to create, extend, create things down the field, explosive plays. But you also kind of saw, some of that dark side of being a gunslinger, where you throw an interception and it looks like you missed it by, almost 5+ yards. And so just being smart, kind of that sweet spot, that harmony between gunslinger, creative, playmaker, why you're playing probably, and why Aiden O'Connell's not playing, to be able to create, but then also take care of the ball, be a little bit smarter the entire game. And then obviously at some point they're going to have to run the ball as well.
JT O'Sullivan, this has been great. But before we get you out of here, former NFL QB, UC Davis alum, and of course you can subscribe to his podcast, or excuse me, his YouTube, the QB School. JT O'Sullivan, it's sports radio. So we got to ask you, who is your top quarterback right now, not named Patrick Mahomes?
Oh, I was going to say, man, I thought I was going to walk right into the easy answer. The guy, I honestly, bro, I don't live in the world of rankings and doing stuff like that.
Sure.
I just won't do it. I would say that the guy that I like watching the most, which is how I kind of quantify it, would probably be CJ Stroud. He's that fun to watch. He's that
Yeah.
polished. He's accurate. He throws with great anticipation. That unit is really fun to watch, how they're creating space and the wide receivers they have there. Just overall, I've really enjoyed his kind of surgence into the league.
Yeah, and I also don't think that's helping the Bryce Young situation. Yeah. So we'll see what happens there. JT O'Sullivan, this has been great. Thank you so much. You got to look us up when you come out to Davis. This has been great stuff. Be sure to subscribe to his YouTube, the QB School, and you might learn a thing or two.
You will.
JT O'Sullivan, thank you so much.
Appreciate it, y'all. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Coming up next, we react to everything JT had to say, especially what he had to say about those two high safeties. Stiles and Watkins, Sactown Sports.
Did you